everyone. It is just 2 o'clock, so can we make a start? I'll welcome you to this meeting of the Governance and Ethics Committee. And the first item on the agenda are the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of March. Can I have your agreement to sign them as a correct record? Thank you very much. I'll do that at the end of the meeting. Apologies for absence and substitutes. I assume Councillor Payne has sent his apologies and you're substituting, Councillor Creamer. You're getting to be a very regular attender here. Perhaps ought to do a permanent substitution. There are no others, I don't think. Nope. Item 3, declarations of interest by members and officers. Are there any declarations that need to be made? Nope. Thank you. Okay, the first substantive item is item number 4, which is an update on the local government and social care ombudsman's decisions, which you can see set out in front of you, the report, with a recommendation which is there starting at the bottom of page 2, going on to the top of page 3, which I move.
I'll second that and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. You've got the details of the 2 complaints that went to the Ombudsman on page 11, and one of which was not upheld. The other one from Children's, the Ombudsman recognised that the internal complaints process had worked effectively and had dealt with it. Marion, I don't know whether there's anything you want to add to this report from the Children's Department.
We've nothing specifically to add just now, except to say that we have implemented some changes within the service area, which should help to address any such similar concerns in the future. But I can answer, and the team manager responsible for this area is with me and can answer any specific questions that members may have.
Are there any questions or comments from members? Yes, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one really quick one. On page 11, the last one, where it says that the gentleman couldn't fill out an application for a blue badge, up to the policy. What have we changed? How have we changed it to make it easier for people?
That's not anything to do with the Children's Department. That's the corporate department. Yeah, Richard, are you going to come in with on that one?
I can answer that. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry. It was just literally the gentleman was unable to write and fill in forms, and I mean we're talking 3 years ago. He well, at the time we were told apparently that we had no procedure to help him other than to ask someone, a friend of his, to fill it in. However, he did try again a year or so later, and he was told the same response. But within a day, we had changed our policy and to help vulnerable customers, and he can now fill it out over the phone in exceptional circumstances with a member of staff.
Okay, Councillor Creamer, you wanted to have a follow-up question?
Just a very quick one. It's maybe a matter of semantics, but the very first one, Ombudsman cannot investigate or override issues where there are court proceedings. Is that the end of it, or when court proceedings are finished, could there be some comeback or not?
Potentially, but he was actually complaining about something the court had told him, which he needs to challenge in court. So it's a bit of a. There's also safeguarding issues and stuff like that that are involved. So we have to be very careful what we say. But the long and short of it is, once there's a court order, if they're complaining about something that was in that court order, that's nothing to do with us.
Sorry, Marion, did you?
I was just going to add that in the case that the Children's were involved in, if there are certain matters which have to be referred to the tribunal, and that takes precedence over the Ombudsman. So in the case that you have regarding Children's, both the Ombudsman and the tribunal were involved and had to respect each other's respective areas of jurisdiction.
I'm sure that's crystal clear to you, Councillor Creamer. And good. Any further questions? No, the report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. If we can move on then to item number 5, learning from complaints in adult social care. If you recall, as I'm sure you do, we as a committee were expressing some concerns a few months ago about the number of, thanks very much for coming anyway, we were expressing our concerns about the number of adult social care ombudsman complaints that were upheld that appeared to be due to a lack of clarity and communication. And we did say that we would like the department to come and just outline to us what lessons they had learnt from that and what they had put in place to ensure that communication has improved. I think it's fair to say that since we made that request, the number of reports that have come to this committee has dropped quite considerably. So you're on a winner, I think, to start with. But you all know Melanie Brooks, and I'm going to actually move the report.
I'll second that and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, and ask Melanie if she would like to make a few comments by way of amplification, and I'll give you the opportunity to ask questions.
I would thank you, Councillor Owings. Afternoon, committee. And first of all, my apologies from Ainsley McDonald. Unfortunately, she's particularly unwell at the moment, so I'm sorry that you're just going to have to tolerate me for the afternoon. So hopefully what I've given in the bit of an outline about how seriously we take complaints in adult social care. So just to summarise them for you, I've given some departmental context. So really sort of summarise the fact that we have contact regularly with about 9,000 people and irregularly with 22,000 people approximately for that we're responsible in the county. And that ranges from a whole range of contacts. We work intensively with somebody every day to where we have quite a transactional relationship, possibly through the customer services centre, for example, where we do one-off pieces of work. And that kind of provides me a bit of a context for how we learn from complaints, because some of the complaints I think are completely avoidable, where you read it and you think, my goodness, why did we do that? We should have learnt from that and at some point intervened much earlier in somebody's story, all the way through to where we have some statutory duty towards somebody, but we don't have the levers which we could have intervened earlier. And that, for example, is when somebody is residing in a care home or receiving home care and paying for their own care. So I'll have a statutory duty for them, but I might not have any contact. So to me, there's quite a big context for how we learn from complaints. But nonetheless, we take them very seriously. We view the ombudsman complaints with the same way we view all of our complaints, because adult social care has a particular framework. People have a statutory duty to make a complaint, which is different from the rest of the council in terms of how we support people. And what we do is we learn in two ways. One is that we look at the individual learning. And so obviously what you get to hear is when it's gone wrong in the worst possible way. And you'll hear normally Sue Batty or Ainsley McDonald describe about how we've learnt from that individual case. But also, as a senior leadership team within the department, we look at the whole of the issue. So we have regular reports on the nature of the complaints, the number of the complaints, we track trends. So we kind of learn from those two examples. And we do that through our quality assurance framework and cycle of improvement. So I've just summarised for you how that works there. And I know that particularly you're interested in the ombudsman outcomes and particularly about learning from communication. So I thought I'd describe some of the pieces of work that those individual complaints had triggered in the department. So one of the areas that we know we have quite a lot of conflict is when we're charging for services, because adult social care is not free, so everybody makes a contribution to their care. So it's naturally a contentious area. And often some of the ombudsman careers outcomes you'll see relate to people paying for their own care. So we've done some particular work within the Learner Disability and Autism Partnership Board and within our Carers Partnership Board to understand how we can communicate those decisions better. So we did what we call a task and finish group, which was led by an officer, a carer and somebody with lived experience. They sort of co-led it as a piece of work, and we did quite a very detailed piece of work, and we wrote, which the outcome was a guide we called Letters Stopped Think, and it was for staff to try and think about how they communicate better from the start. And I think it fits quite neatly with that area that Richard talked about, or where we weren't able to support somebody to fill out a form, because when you hear about it, you think, well, that's just outrageous. Why wouldn't we do that? So this whole guide is about trying to equip staff with trying to think about viewing the issue from the person's perspective or carer's perspective and get it right first time. And that's been a really good piece of work for the co-production piece. The other bit that we do is we have an ongoing weekly message with the whole department, a director's communication. So if we've got an area that's coming up as quite contentious, we'll write about how we approach things in that communication letter. So Ainsley's referenced some of the way that we cascade those key messages. So I think they're two examples of how we're trying to learn from the complaints. So I'm sorry, I've taken up quite a bit of time, Councillor Owen, but just to highlight some of the key areas. But really happy to answer the questions, because I know as a committee it's been something you've been concerned about from time, that we're not learning the lessons in the department.
Yes, it was particularly in terms of communication with your clients, or in the case of the Ombudsman's reports, the lack of communication on what really seemed to be trivial matters, in a sense, that the fact that you've not been able to communicate effectively in itself was trivial, set against the professional work that the social workers had done with those clients, and that was a disappointment to us. Now then, are there any questions from members? Councillor Henry.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. We welcome some of this information in this report, particularly the trend of a reduction of annual social care complaints since 2019. However, I think particularly paragraph 17 acknowledges that more can be done. So the data within this report, particularly paragraph 16, would suggest that Nottinghamshire performed comparatively better than other authorities, which is good to hear. But I believe that there is still a case that Nottinghamshire could go further, as acknowledged in the paragraph 17 I mentioned earlier on, to do more to establish credible, national recognizable benchmarks for these ideas that have been put down. So my question is, are the council currently doing anything by way of establishing a benchmarking currently with other authorities?
Do you want to come in first?
So Councillor Henry, I do agree with you that we can do more. So if I was looking at the trend, I would want there to be lots of complaints, so more than we currently get, but that they're resolved in the first stage. So people have got the right to share how they're feeling, the right to express they're not happy with the service, but that we've got the right measures in place to resolve them early, and to see the complaints that get referred to the Ombudsman and upheld as to be as minimal as possible. So I'd agree with you about the overall trend. So we're not quite there in terms of the way I'd want that pie, if you like, to be divided in terms of where the numbers are. Benchmarking, we have some really good benchmarking through the Adult Social Care Outcomes Framework. So a number of indicators there that we benchmark across the UK and East Midlands average. So they're the quality of life indicators. So it tells us whether carers or people with lived experience feel they have a good quality of life, to feel that they're listened to. So there's some of those benchmarks that we use quite regularly. What we don't benchmark is numbers of complaints, and I think for me that would be quite difficult to do so in a meaningful way, but it's certainly something that we could be reflecting if it was useful to committee going forward. But I think those experiential outcomes about how people feel about the county council, to me, are the ones that we really place value on as a department, if that's helpful.
Just to add to that before I let you come back, there has been an East Midlands group of chairmen of governance and ethics, or whatever they're called, committees set up. We had an inaugural meeting a few weeks ago. I don't know when the next one is scheduled. This is certainly something that I could put to them as to whether or not it's something they would like to take forward, to see whether or not they want to collect more data. I think it is useful to have those sort of groups, particularly an East Midlands group. The trouble is, it's a large group because all the district and borough authorities are invited along as well. In my previous role, we had the lead members for children's social children and young people's services, and we were able to drive quite a few things through the East Midlands Council, and that was very useful. But I will try and raise that with them to see if it's something that they would like to take on board. Did you want to come back, Councillor Henry, and then I'll call Councillor Creamer?
Yes, thanks very much for that, Chair. The bit around the East Midlands group is useful for what, and thanks very much for your comments as well, Melanie. So for public record, really, I just want to say that it's not a recommendation as such, but it's a suggestion, as outlined by our Chair, that we could take that the Council notes the contents of this report and commits to work alongside comparative local authorities in England to establish a benchmarking framework for complaints, with a view to reporting back to this council in future progress. So,
yeah, well, as I said, I will try and take that forward. I don't think it's going to be a simple piece of work by any means, and I presume that the lead politicians for social services also have their groups across the East Midlands, where it might be something that you could raise there as well. Yeah.
Ainsley MacDonald is also leading a piece of regional work across East Midlands ADAS called Learning from Complaints, so taking the learning that we have had in Nottinghamshire to the region, and part of what she's hoping to achieve there is some degree of benchmarking. So certainly we'd be really happy to come back and feed that back to a future committee if that's useful.
So it's been covered from all angles. Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, very quickly, because it's basically been answered. But it's just a general question that could actually cover any committee. But where it comes to benchmarking, is there enough work going on at the moment in comparisons between benchmarks pre-COVID and now? Because benchmarks will obviously have moved regardless. So I'm agreeing with what you're saying, Chairman. Just wondered if there is enough cognizance given to the actual things have changed in the last 2 years. That's all. So it's just a general question. Is it being looked at? Existing benchmarks for whatever, and are they being looked at?
Do you want to say anything on that?
So within Adult Social Care and Public Health Committee, we do have a regular performance report that looks at how we benchmark in adult social care and public health, and we have tracked the trends about where our performance has either improved or worsened through COVID. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it's going to take some time to settle down anyway. I don't think we can draw any real conclusions at this stage. Unless there are any more questions, the report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That is unanimous. Right. Item number 6 is the external audit annual audit report. And please note this is for 2020-21. And our auditors are Grant Thornton, and we have a representative from Grant Thornton. Would you like to introduce yourself to the committee?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So my name's Andrew Smith. I'm the new engagement lead for the County Council. I replaced John Gregory, who's retired at the end of January. So I'll be the engagement lead going forward for 21-22.
Thank you. You have the report set out in front of you. So as a formality, I'll move the recommendation.
I'll second that recommendation, reserve my right.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add to your very late report at this stage?
Thank you, Chair. Well, just in terms of the lateness of the report, just to address your comment, it is late. I won't try and defend that, albeit maybe not quite as late as you imagine. The NEO guidelines in terms of timescales for auditors is to deliver this 3 months after we've signed your audit opinion for the year. That was obviously signed back in November, so technically we had until February this year to actually deliver this report. Obviously, we're now in April, so it is late by a couple of months. So I will accept that. I think largely, I think John just didn't get to finalise this before he retired, unfortunately. So I think it was one of those that fell through. We'll obviously endeavour to make sure it is earlier and brought to this committee earlier for this coming year. So I just have to send my apologies to the committee for the fact that we were a couple of months late in delivering. Other than that, Chair, I'm happy to take the report as read and take any questions. Bearing in mind
It's late, and you've admitted that it's your fault that it's late. I I assume we shall be getting a reduction on your fee.
There won't be a reduction in fee, Chair. To be honest, whilst we accept that we are late in here, I have had to put additional resource in to make good on this report to make sure it's come to this committee. So we obviously absorb that cost and not pass it on to the council.
Well,
but we certainly can't offer a reduction in fee.
aren't we grateful? Yeah. You know, I bet if we were late in submitting our accounts, you'd have something to say about it. Right. Any questions from...
They were quite accurate, apart from anything else. Yeah, it's just a general